Coming up on today's show, VW's boss claims 50 million electric cars on the way from VW. The wheels on the bus go round and round with zero emissions. And another change to whether you get free supercharging with your Tesla. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. It's Tuesday, the 13th of November 2018. It's Martyn Lee here, and I've been through every EV story today that I can find to save you time. And thank you to myev.com for helping make this show. They are the ultimate time saver when you think about it. The first marketplace in the US for buying and selling pure EVs. And plug-in hybrids as well, but what I'm saying is you haven't got to use those other buying and selling websites that aren't catered for EVs. They're still stuck in the dark ages. You can also learn and research about EVs at myev.com. Thank you to our latest supporter on Patreon and a new producer of the podcast, Andre Evans-Ross. Andre, thank you so much for your support. Latest producer of the show and executive producer of the show, by the way. Joining over the weekend was Raj Bedwell, who I had two attempts at his surname and got both spectacularly wrong. He said, actually, you were pretty close, but not quite getting it bang on. And you know I'm a stickler for getting people's names right. I think it's the most personal thing. That makes sense, but it is the most personal thing we have, and it's the most respectful thing we can all do is to get each other's names right. So, Raj Bedwell, thank you very much for being a new executive producer. Patreon.com/EV News Daily if you too would like your name on the podcast. Let's start with a really big story that needs taking apart a little bit just to make sure it makes sense. Volkswagen could build 50 million cars, electric cars, on its new platform. The new platform is called the MEB platform, and it's not meant for sharing some combustion cars, some hybrid cars. It's pure EVs, and they're going to expand their manufacturing footprint in the US. The chief exec, Herbert Diess, told Automotive News, and that was reported by Reuters today, comes from an interview last month, but it's only been released today. On Volkswagen's Chattanooga plant for building EVs, he says, "We set up the plant in Chattanooga, always with the idea to be able to grow it, to mirror it. The plant is still too small. We're considering different options. It might be electric cars, it might be different derivatives of the Atlas SUV. It's still open." On the rumoured partnership with Ford, who could be using VW's MEB platform to build their own electric cars and somewhat leapfrog a lot of the R&D that's required in that by just joining in with VW. He said, "What we're talking about is sharing a few platforms and manufacturing sites, which makes sense. And within the dialogue, we're also touching other options, but this will be the main focus if we come to a conclusion. Today, we have hundreds of different drivetrains in our industry, and there's a lot of differentiation in the drivetrain. I think this will become less because the battery cells will become very similar on the basis of the same chemistry inside." So that quote there, confirming the rumours, which we've previously reported on the podcast, that Ford will be using the MEB platform from VW. Ford have been showing recently a lot of confidence in their ability to sell EVs, but actually not doing any work on them. And this is why. Because they didn't need to. They're just going to write a check and use VW's. And work in partnership with VW, it must be said. It's probably just not just a single supplier deal. They will add to the partnership and bring their own expertise. No doubt, I imagine, they'll want to input into that, but it's most certainly VW's MEB platform. Don't get confused about that. This platform is well developed and being used to build VW's range of EVs, which Ford's could also be built on. Saves them a ton of time in R&D, in learning costly mistakes if they can just use somebody else's in a partnership. What about that claim, though, of 50 million electric cars, which is where I started? He said this: VW could build 50 million electric vehicles globally across all of its brands, of which they have many, beginning in 2020, and had battery sourcing agreements for all those 50 million. He said licensing the MEB to other automakers would lead to further efficiency gains, and a VW spokesman then afterwards clarified a few things. The spokesman said the number that was mentioned by Diess in that interview was a theoretical and long-term goal for the MEB electric car platform in total. Volkswagen Group's current vehicle platform is or that's what the MEB is. Their current sales are 10.7 million as of 2017. So VW know how to build in scale. Almost 11 million vehicles sold for VW. But this is where we need to be just a bit of a stickler for detail. There was no time frame mentioned. Well, if a platform is around for 8 or 12 years, well then, yes, even if it was around for 5 years and every single one of their cars was on it, that would be 50 million, but we know it's not. They're going to introduce electric cars. So if they have a lifespan of 8, 10, 12, 15 years for a platform, well, then you're going to get to 50 million eventually. But there was no time frame in any of the interviews I could find to source this story. As for EV sales in the US, well, sales are picking up. It's not all over the place, but West Coast, says Herbert Diess, if you go to a parking lot, you see a decent mix of electric cars there. Most of them probably Teslas, but what's happening now is the cars become so much better. We will be aggressive on pricing. We will be much lower than Tesla. But we have all the huge economies of scale, and the car is specifically designed for battery power instead of being converted from a combustion powertrain. So let's just take apart a little bit what Herbert Diess there has said. And this story deserves time spent on it because, as the main man at VW, we need to have a look at what he's saying. He says, if you go to a parking lot in the West Coast, then you see a decent mix of cars. Then he says most of them are probably Teslas. So is it a decent mix, or is it all Teslas? Then he says, we will be aggressive on the pricing, we will be much lower than Tesla, but we will have all the economies of scale, and the car is designed for battery power. Okay, so we will be much lower than Tesla. So, again, very non-specific language there. Will they be lower than a £150,000 Model X? Yeah. Will they sell VWs much lower than a $35,000 Model 3? Maybe. Good luck with the margins on that, but they can do it. They're making millions of cars a year. And then he says, we have all the huge economies of scale, and the car is designed for battery power. Well, yeah, every single Tesla is designed for battery power, and every waking moment of every single Tesla employee of the last 10 years has been spent thinking about solely how do we design and make better pure electric cars. That's been their mission since inception, right? So, congratulations to VW for doing this, and we really, really want VW to make amazing cars. But I still sense from the words on the page in black and white, and this is very important because you need to hear how people say stuff. I'm simply reading you these words. There does still sound, is it just me, or is there still, from the big automakers, a dismissive undertone to Tesla here? Like, hey, they're getting on with it, which is all well and good, but you wait till we arrive. That's not what he said. That's kind of my interpretation. Am I right? Am I wrong? I'm happy to be wrong. I normally am. Let me know in the comments or email hello@evnewsdaily.com. Also, let's try and make sense of the numbers. VW have signed off, or will sign off, 48 billion euros worth of battery contracts with various suppliers of batteries for those 50 million cars. So, 48 billion divided by 50 million works out at about 960 euros per car. That's just really crude maths. Yes, of course, some of those cars they sell will have smaller batteries, some of them have larger batteries. But 48 billion for the 50 million cars, 960 euros per car. Say the pack cost is 100 euros per kilowatt hour. And it's not at the moment, by the way. Cell level, yeah, you can probably get close to that, but pack level. But again, VW saying, we're the big boys, we're going to come in, smash it, show you how it's done, bring all our economies in. So let's be really generous to them and say they can get down to 100 euros at pack level per kilowatt hour. Well, at 960 euros per car, that's every car coming with a 9.6 kilowatt hour battery. Have I got my maths wrong on that? Have I missed a zero? Is it meant to be 96 kilowatt hours? No, I don't think I am. Please correct me. Like I say, I'm an idiot on a podcast. I probably got that wrong. Let me know what you think. You can email the show, hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can leave a comment if you want to on the YouTube or Facebook comments, or even on the blog's got a feedback form. Big story today. We've got a lot on VW's claim. They're going to make 50 million EVs with 48 billion worth of battery contracts. I'll put links to those stories in the show notes and you can have a look for yourself. Like I say, we are on their side. We want VW to be another big maker of EVs. We want every big car company to be making EVs, and successfully and profitably. But sometimes you've got to dig a little bit deeper than the headlines and just do your own critical thinking in the days of the internet and making sure that you just don't believe everything you're told. Well, moving on, 5 new battery-powered buses in White Plains have been sent into service this fall. They run so quietly that they actually have to play a 4-tone melody for the safety of kids on the streets. That's according to New York Times, when explaining why the school kids these days are calling their electric bus the singing bus. The school district's 5 singing buses that cost $365,000 apiece, more than 3 times the price of a new diesel school bus. Still a rarity, though. Of the roughly 480,000 school buses in the USA, only a few hundred are now fully electric. California has spent millions of dollars to help the budget-strapped school districts purchase dozens of new electric buses, while New York and Massachusetts have funded their own similar projects. Many cities, including LA and Seattle, have begun purchasing electric buses for their mass transit fleets. The work has begun, but let's not forget that there's cities like Shenzhen in China with 16,000 plus buses in their public fleet, and every single one of them is electric. Not talking about 100 or 1,000 or half. 100% of their public bus fleet is pure electric. And by the end of the year, the aim in Shenzhen, and this is what you can do for rightly or wrongly with the political force that the way that China manages their country, the way that they can operate, they want to move all taxis to pure EV by the end of the year as well, which is a stunning achievement. Well, from Teslas, from the buses of Los Angeles and Seattle to Teslas that you may buy to take your kids to school if they're not on the bus, Inside EVs are reporting about a change to the supercharging model. See, this is what happens. Tesla change once again the goalposts, and it makes me choke. Inside EVs are reporting that, according to the latest news, cars sold anytime after the 2nd of November last week and onwards aren't getting the free supercharging credits that cars previously were. So 100% of supercharging now to be paid for, unless you use some sort of referral code. I've said in the past that Tesla changed the rules so often, you now have to expect it with them. They are simply reacting to market conditions. They're not a normal car company. They're a software company, and their business changes day by day, and so they change the rules sometimes, quite often. From Tesla's blog, referring to the old free supercharging, you got 400 kilowatt hours of annual credits. So certain Model S and X vehicles, which were sold before 2nd of November, had the annual supercharger credit. 400 kilowatt hours, that's about 1,000 miles. For usage above the complimentary annual credits, a small fee applied if you're supercharging. Well, the credits replenish automatically on the anniversary of your delivery or known ownership transfer. Unused credits don't roll over to the next year, and you can anytime see your vehicle's supercharger credit status if you log into your Tesla account. However, that was before November 2nd. After that, it's now all gone. So Model 3, Model S, Model X, now all in line if you're buying a brand new one, unless you start getting into the whole referral program thing. And holy moly, that can get complicated, but that's where you can score some free supercharging. Even if you don't love Teslas, let's move on to this story. Being a sore loser is definitely worse than being a Tesla fanboy or fangirl. The driver of a Tesla Model 3 Performance got the update for the new track mode and immediately took it to a race. The Global Time Attack Super Lap at Buttonwillow Raceway in Buttonwillow, California. Happened last weekend and scored a time of 2 minutes, pretty much 2 minutes dead. Halfway into the podium ceremony, because this driver came second of all the cars that were there, of all the cars that turned up to race, this Tesla came second. Halfway through the ceremony, somebody said, hang on, look at the rule lists. I don't think you can give that competitor the prize. And that challenge was successful. They did it during the podium ceremony. How classless do you have to be? How bitter a fossil fuel driver do you have to be? As the person shaking the champagne and getting their trophy, do you go, excuse me, I think if you look at Rule 2.7b, subsection 95, you'll find this, to try and get them disqualified. Now, this was the really minute rule they found buried in the rules list on the Global Time Attack website. I had a look, and you can find this. If you search for the phrase drivetrain, there is a section called Engine Drivetrain Fuel, and this is the quote. I quote, "Only one internal combustion engine is permitted per vehicle. Auxiliary water, methanol injection is allowed in all classes. The mixture may not be more than 50% methanol in classes where exotic fuels are not allowed." End quote. So the actual rule is only one internal combustion engine is permitted per vehicle. So that doesn't say that you have to have one. It just says that you are permitted to have one. So really, if I was interpreting the rule, I would say, great, I'm permitted an internal combustion engine. I just didn't need one because it's better without one. However, the driver was disqualified. Halfway through the ceremony, they were binned off and didn't get their prize. So actually, if you turn up in a BMW i8 or even a BMW i3 range extender, you'd have kept your prize. Because they have got an engine in. How ridiculous is that? They let them turn up, they let them start, they let them race, all of that, and then somebody finds a rule buried deep that was successfully challenged. It's not the last time, my friends, that an electric car is going to beat your fossil car. You better get used to it, and those little rules aren't going to be there forever. Well, the GM executive in charge of their global strategy says that electric pickup trucks and not in the company's plans. His name is Mike Abelson. He is GM's Vice President of Global Strategy. So this guy is super senior, or just about as high as you can get in terms of knowing about the roadmap of your company. GM's VP of Global Strategy. And he was talking last Thursday at FT's Future of the Car Summit in Detroit. According to Fred Lambert at Electric reporting on this story, he said consumers can expect 20 new all-electric GM vehicles in the next 5 years. Woo-woo! GM is also going to deploy a fleet of self-driving EVs as part of a ride-sharing platform. And despite those advancements, GM's gas-powered cars and trucks are still going to be the main revenue stream for the company for at least the next 2 decades, he said. That's according to the Detroit Free Press. Mike Abelson said this, and I quote, "The core business is going to be the core business for a couple of decades to come. There will not be any EV pickups. We do believe we'll lead the industry in EVs sometime in the next decade or so." End quote. So whilst Tesla are currently designing an EV pickup for sometime in 2019 for the reveal, no date of production yet, but the reveal next year, GM don't even think that EV pickup trucks are going to have a serious part of the business for 20 years. And yet, they say the quote, "We do believe we'll lead the industry in EVs." I find the whole thing really confusing sometimes. We report on these stories of these big executives making either big speeches or talking to journalists, and they're just talking an amazing game. In the next decade or so, says GM, we believe we are going to lead the industry with EVs. All right. Going to make a pickup truck? Nah. Do you think you should? Nah, it's all right, don't worry about it. 20 years of those, still selling diesels. Maybe it's just me. It's often just me, by the way. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know. And finally, we'll go to Citroen, or Citroen, as maybe I meant to say. Citroen is planning to launch an all-new C4 Cactus in 2020 with a full electric powertrain. Alongside conventional engine choices, says Autocar, the all-new version is going to move from the old platform to PSA Group's new compact modular platform. It's going to be shared with also the Peugeot 208 and the Vauxhall Corsa. Citroen's Senior VP of Global Marketing and Communications, Arnaud Belloni, confirmed to Autocar the C4 Cactus is going to be the first full electric model launched by the brand since the city car, the C0. The new models form part of PSA Group's wide-reaching electrification plans, which will see a plug-in hybrid and electric version of every Citroen, DS, Peugeot and Vauxhall launch from next year onwards. Thank you very much for listening today. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, and the fact that you give me 1 or 2 minutes a day, let alone, what is this now, 20 minutes. I value your time so much. I'm so grateful for the time that you spend on the podcast. Please do share this if you can with anybody who you think might also benefit from it. And please do join in with our question of the week, which is this. It's set by myev.com. Either present or upcoming, which EV are you most excited about? Either an EV that's on the market right now or one that we know is on the way. Maybe one I've told you about on the podcast today. Which EV are you most excited about? Please let me know. Email hello@evnewsdaily.com or any of the other ways you can get hold of me. 115 patrons of the show do make this show happen, and I really couldn't do it without you. Thank you for your generosity at patreon.com/evnewsdaily. There are 294 episodes totally free online. Thanks to those patrons of the show. We get to keep them all online, stream them all online, hopefully, and always will be, to infinity and beyond. The blog is evnewsdaily.com, and in the meantime, if you want to catch me on the socials, Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, just search for EV News Daily. Do have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.